Radio Bula Duavata da mai rongo de tiko ana tavi ser mai bereto na dhanra komo ana. Kota mai kina ngona ni sa sivitonga na ono and rua na miniti me baka kero baka reita ka tiko nia kero veitalanoa ka tiko ani ni ndasana mai rongo de tiko and rongo de tiko e nei kawini kua na nonta programo Vakaraubuka e na ve madhawa ka wakatokai tiko na Vaikailavo e na Vakaraubuka se na Finance Friday. Ka nda wakawinawina ka tiko kina e na kawini kua ni nonta bulangin dokai tiko o Brad Hamada. Kemni sa ve kemni nanda wakamuri tiko mai na nonta programo e na ve singa se na ve madhawa o ni sana reire na numatiko na vida na madhawa sa wati ki roa mai tau ia butaka tiko yani ki Brad Hamada na nonda ngona bata. And we are coming to Vakaraubuka, we are wakatokai tiko na Finance Friday. And I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome Brad once again to our Finance Friday. Mbula vinaka, Brad.
All right, thank you for having me.
How are you this afternoon? This evening, actually. It's after 6.
I am doing great. Things are a little bit shaky right now in the economy, but when you have financial education, you're in good shape.
So true, so true. And that's why, once again, we are grateful that you're able to come on our show and kind of enlighten us a little, enlighten our audience, our community, our Fijian community, especially like I've shared with you always that in our culture, we, most of us, I would say the majority of us just grew up knowing that, not really, maybe I'd say not really taught to save money, on the importance of saving money. Our culture is such where, it's all about communal living and we just live for today. Tomorrow will take care of itself. But we do realize that being here in the United States and for all of our listeners listening in from other overseas countries, are also probably going through the same thing. We know that it is important to think of retirement. Because once again, I would just like to also share, Brad, that our culture, like I said, communal living, which means that we don't really worry about retirement. For us, that's what we have our children for. That's what we have our grandchildren for, right? And but living here in the United States and the fact that most of us are here doing caregiving, we know that it is important to start thinking retirement. So you being the finance professional, I would say, what would you say to our community in terms of retirement? When should one start thinking retirement? When is the ideal age? When should we start having that conversation?
So that's a great question, and I get that question a lot from not just people of Fijian descent, but everyone. They ask, when should I start? And my answer to that is, it's not necessarily about starting to save money or how much you can save, but a lot of it is about building your habits. And so what I find a lot of times is when people make money, let's say you get a job in high school, you make money and you spend money. And you start, you just make money to spend it, and you start to build that habit so that later on, when you start to make more money, you just spend more money. And I always believe that, no one in their right mind is ever going to blame you for saving too much. And for a lot of people, when they start to save, I say, start simple. Start saving like 10%. So if you make $1,000, can you save $100? Right? If you make $2,000 a month, can you put aside $200? And that's the start. And I think that once you start to build that habit, many people build the habit of spending and they are addicted to spending. And I tell people, just like spending can be addictive, so can saving.
Which is
and
a
I
good
don't think
addiction.
a lot of people, like I tell people, I'm addicted to saving money. I care so much about my daughter and so much about my future, and I just want to save more. Right? And so I do save money. I do spend money, but I also make sure that I save before I spend. And that is a mindset that you can teach yourself and that you can develop over time if you are disciplined.
Thank you. So saving money. You're saying that if we, like for our children, for instance, here. We're here with our children, our grandchildren. So it's really just teaching them the mindset.
Yes. And the tricky part, though, I think, is that, like you said, the Fijians have very communal living. But then when you move to the US here, you realize the culture is much different. And things are much more expensive and a little bit out of whack. And so, when they say, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, right?
So
And
true.
so when you come to the US here, things do change, and cultures need to adapt a little bit to what the general population here does. And part of that is starting to become more financially educated, to think more about your generation, the next generation, and future generations.
And I think that I could rightfully say, Brad, that for us, we really have no excuse, because we come here, and that's most of us. Like I would say, majority of us, we get to the U.S. What do? We do caregiving, and of course, when we're caregiving, we're taking care of the elderly. We know that there's money coming from somewhere for them to be able to help to pay us. Right? They're no longer working, but somehow they did something back in the days that enabled them to be able to pay us to take care of them. So that in itself is an eye opener, and that's why I say we really don't have any excuse. Nui so I'm just gonna go off in Fijian, Brad, if you don't mind. Nui taka weekend to na sema tiko mai na kabini kua weekend to na geli rongoda tali tiko na programa do mbi tiko yani na YouTube na Vaikailavo and na Vakaraubuka ni rauni na beba kungeti tiko weekend to ndo na tiki na mbimbi tuko na go, Brad, where saving is addictive and can be addictive and should be addictive, right, Brad? Whereas for us, it's more like spending. We just like to take care of each other. If there's a function, what do we do? What do Fijians do? We go all out to take care of the function, to make sure we look good to our other extended families and friends, and then we can come home and maybe have bread and tea for the whole week, because there's no money left. And one of our fellow listeners here just sharing with us this evening, that, and this is the reality of our situation. Lebu weekend, we don't even have $500 saved. And that's the truth. So I hope that with this program, that you coming on our show and other financial professionals would really encourage our people to save. Me rauninda na marurui lavo menda kilatiko, na mbimbi ni marurui lavo. Wakaritaka tiko, Brad, to start off with 10%. We know, like most of us, Brad, are tithe payers. So that's like we're paying one tithing to the Lord. Most of us are Christians. And I think that then the next thing should be, and that's one thing I personally am also struggling with. Like I put my tithing aside, and then the next thing is like, okay, I have all this money. Saving is something that I'm also struggling with. So what would you tell me and tell my other community members here to encourage us? I know that you did say saving is addictive and can be addictive. How did you get to start?
So that's a good question. And I believe most people, I mean, just in general, we're not born knowing how to save money or understanding how money works, right? But what it takes, I tell people that some people feel like, oh, I don't save money. It's going to be very difficult. I say, actually, it is difficult for about the first 30 days. But if you can be disciplined for 30 days, and you can build a habit in 30 days, that 30 days can reflect over the next 2 to 3 generations of your family.
I love that.
Right? So a lot of times we think about, oh, it's so hard. I wanted, like today, I wanted to go out and have fast food, but I'm going to be going out of country. And so I'm going to be at the beach. So I don't want to look too, I don't want to look too out of shape. And so I have to focus and make sure that for this period of time, and I tell people 30 days is enough to create a habit that can work for your lifetime, your kids' lifetime, their kids. And that's what's amazing about it. It's not that difficult once you start, but the thought of starting is what stops most people. They think it's going to be difficult. They think it's going to be a struggle forever, so they never start. But those that do start, you'll find out that within about 30 days, maybe 45 days, if you're really hard at it, right? Then you start to say, hey, this isn't that bad. I'm used to it. Okay, I can save this money. And then you start to say, I can actually save a little bit more. And I can save a little bit more. And I can save a little bit more. And it starts to grow from there. But I tell people, you have to give yourself a chance. You have to commit for a short period of time for the next, let's say 30 days, and really focus on making that your priority to save money instead of spend. And you'll see your habits start to change very quickly.
I love that. That's just really simple and doable. 30 days. Tolu sanga bulungan na singa wambuta ni. Don't rendre bekenda tun rendre na marroi labo eh. Ya, beba kaba karita ketingo Brad. Tolu sanga bulungan na singa to tekabu to tobolea and na rawa na lakolanga bakami tu sanali maru takamai will get to enjoy seeing our money growing, right? And thank you to all the listeners. Bikim do kaya na sema tiku mai neka vini kua kaya bakai tiku nam do baka tataro me baleta na ilabo se na kena rawa se dabang beka rawa ni na bia kilai na buku ni maruru ilabo se na rawa baka daba na maruru ilabo rawa ni ninge bolata kamai ni bola binaka isoa batura ramba. So just a question from one of our listeners here, Brad, just asking Brad, how would he differentiate or elaborate more on the difference between saving and investing?
Okay, so I say generally they're very similar. The first thing that it requires is that we save, right? So that's kind of the first step. So just, we can't invest if we don't have money. So I say the first beginning, you're just starting to think about saving money every single day, right? Or you tell yourself, hey, of the money I'm gonna make sure that I save $10 a day. Everyone can save $10 a day if they try. So $10 a day can add up to about $300 a month, right? 30 months 30 days in a month. And once you can discipline yourself to do that for 1 month, right? And you can do it for 2 months, and you start